Okay, so I'm going to discuss this with the New York Islanders like I did with the Canucks this morning. And tomorrow I'll figure out which other teams I'm going to do. And obviously I'm going to do this with other teams as well. They look like they're just in the dregs. They're in the bottom. And we'll look back when the playoffs roll around in April and see which ones were actually in okay shape. Now, you take Tavares out of the middle of this team, you've got a hole. And I'm not trying to gloss that over. I'm not saying that the Islanders are actually in okay shape, because they're not. They're absolutely not in okay shape. But, and these lines can move around. But on the wings, you got Lee, Beauvillier, Ladd, and Martin on the left side. Bailey, Eberle, Komarov, and Clutterbuck on the right side. A little bit of grit brought in with Komarov and Martin. That's Lou Lamoriello putting his stamp on the team, bringing guys over from Toronto. Down the middle, Barzal, Nelson, Filppula, and Cizikas. And that is one of the weakest middles in the league. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But I do not mind the wings. Now, if Lee can replicate the 40-goal season he had last year, if Bailey can maintain really solid production without John Tavares, if Eberle can have another season along the lines of what he had last year, remember, the Islanders didn't have a problem scoring goals. The problem was here. Leddy, Boychuk, Hickey, Pulock, Pelech, Mayfield, and Sebastian Aho I have projected as the number 7 guy. Now, up front, I have Kiefer Bellows, Tom Kuhnhackl, who they just signed. He can fill in. He's probably the 13th forward. And Josh Ho-Sang might be the really big wild card in this. If Ho-Sang comes in and forces one of these guys out of a job, they can move somebody out and maybe get some help down the middle. Maybe. But on the blue line, I think this is where the Achilles heel lies. Because Boychuk's best days are behind him. I think they brought back Hickey because they didn't see anybody on the free agent market that was an upgrade over Hickey. Pulock is still developing. Leddy, I think, is still capable of being a solid defenseman. Pelech and Mayfield are 5'6". I think Aho probably pushes out Mayfield by mid-season if it takes him that long. But that being said, there are going to be prospects that force their way into this lineup. I don't have Dal Call in here because who knows, right? And then goaltending. And everybody's kind of laughing about Leonard going to the Islanders. I'm not sure why. Because Leonard's numbers before this past season were pretty darn good. If they can do what they have to improve the blue line, the Islanders' biggest problem this past season was they were allowing about 50 shots a game. During a crazy stretch this year, when I was doing all the previews and reviews, every time I did a review, the Islanders were allowing about 50 shots. So the Islanders didn't have a problem with their goal scoring. John Tavares going out means that their goals are going to drop. Maybe they lose 30 goals this year. But really their massive problem was the defense and goaltending. That's where having Lou Lamoriello as GM is a good thing. Because the first thing he did in Toronto was help fix he brought in Freddie Anderson, and their goals against went down. And yes, they managed to snag Austin Matthews with the number 1 pick. Well, now that he's lost Tavares, maybe he wants to do something similar with the Islanders, or maybe he sees enough talent here to be able to turn things around. And I do see enough talent with the New York Islanders to turn things around, and I do think Leonard will be the starter, Greiss will be the backup. And then in the case of Greiss not being able to hold his weight, you've still got Gibson, who's come back as a restricted free agent for 1 more year. And you can go with Leonard and Gibson. And would that be a weak goaltending tandem? Maybe. But Leonard has put up save percentages before of .920 and above. And if he puts up a .920 save percentage, and if this defense gets one body added to it, all they need is, I think, one solid defensive defenseman that's good at both blocking shots and preventing those cross-crease passes and those big opportunities that they were giving up all year last year. The Islanders can be in the mix. And it's funny because, you know, there's panic and pandemonium involving the Islanders. And I can kind of understand it, but at the same time, thanks to the emergence of Matthew Barzal, the Calder winner this past year, it doesn't hurt as much as it would have if, let's say, he'd gone last year. So if last summer had been the end of Tavares' contract and he goes to Toronto, we would have seen the Islanders in a complete panic mode. I don't necessarily think that's necessary. Nelson, I know, takes flack and I know he can be inconsistent, but he's capable of 20 goals. Filppula is a decent fit-in, and if he experiences a further erosion, I think Cizikas can play a few more minutes. Cizikas doesn't offer the offensive upside. It's much like Martin and Clutterbuck, but hey, Martin's been here before. So Matt Martin returning to form with the Islanders could be a big deal. I know I didn't do a trade video yesterday on that, and I apologize to Islanders fans. Consider this a way for me making up for it by pointing out that adding him to the lineup helps. I think it does. And I think that as long as the Islanders can get back to their previous, I can't say winning ways with the lineup, but I can say that a few years ago when they were a playoff team, their identity seemed to be a hard-working, hard-hitting, gritty team. They seem to be getting back to that. When you look at this bottom six, other than Ladd, and I mean Ladd has his gritty moments too, this is a pretty tough bunch. And we'll see what they do. But I'm not necessarily just piling on the Islanders. I'm not willing to pile on the Islanders. Do I think they'll finish last in the league? Maybe. But this is the funny thing about July is that people come out of free agency and there's panic. Absolute, sheer, complete, and total panic. Or jubilation, depending on which fan base you are. And very often when we look back at free agents and free agent day and how it works, we overreact. And I do think there's some of that with the Islanders. An overreaction like, well, they're dead. That's the only good player they had. Even though he's not the only good player they had. And I think what's going to emerge this year is that he won't be there as the guy who's got the spotlight. So as long as Barzal can handle facing top defensive assignments in the league, and that's where it's going to be interesting. Can Matt Barzal, a young kid who's still learning the league, can he handle those top defensive matchups every night that were going to Tavares last year? If he can, and if he can learn from this, and if he can develop into a better all-around player, they're not in that bad a shape. If Barzal can put up 80, 85 points this year, it's really not that bad. But there's a lot of things that have to fall in place, and I really don't look at this team and say, oh, it's garbage, because I don't see that. I have concerns about the blue line. I have mild concerns about the goaltending, but I do think Leonard is an upgrade on Halak. And I think Halak going to Boston was the best thing for him too. I think Yarrow Halak's time in New York had to come to an end. He could not come back. He shouldn't have come back this past season either. And now they've got Leonard, potentially Leonard and Gibson if Gray struggles. And I really think that would be an improvement for them. So if their goaltending and their defense improves, they may be able to absorb the loss of John Tavares better than anybody's giving them credit for right now. I'd be interested to know what you guys think, though. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section below. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yes, the How Bad Is It series. I've done Vancouver. I've done the Islanders. You guys don't need to suggest teams in the comment section below because I know which teams are in kind of rough condition. And, you know, there's Montreal, there's Detroit, and others. And I have no problem just looking at their lineups and just doing a quick overview like this. This isn't a season preview. That's not what I'm doing here. This is just right now, as of July 4th, where lineups are at. There's still other free agents out there, other trades and moves to be made, but I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.